Yay, today we're going to be analyzing a two-bedroom condo in Greensboro, North Carolina. Just a heads up, I'm releasing another episode this upcoming week with another investor that specializes in condos and townhomes. You're not going to want to miss that on Monday. So, without further ado, let's show you what I'm filtered on. So, right now I'm in Greensboro, North Carolina. I'm filtered on properties up to 175, looking for 2 to 3 bedroom properties, or townhouse or condos, and I'm only looking at properties that are new, so less than 7 days on Redfin. Found this property is 5739 Bramblegate Road, Unit C, as in Charlie. And you look at the photos of this property. I mean, I would say it's much, pretty much rent ready. Don't see any issues here. You got a little extra storage out there, so that might be good. I don't love that the HVAC unit is not in a cage. Sometimes that I've had HVAC stolen before from one of my own rentals. So I'm going to put it in a cage today. So let's kind of go through these numbers here. Now, the first thing you want to do is you want to Google Greensboro Housing Authority or whatever city or county housing authority that you want to particularly invest in. What I'm putting in is 2025 payment standards. And I clicked on the first link right here. Usually it'll pop up, but if not, you can kind of scroll around and then you can eventually find payment standards. So you can see right here that the Greensboro Housing Authority payment standards for a two-bedroom property is 1247. So let me write that down. 1247. Two bed GHA payment standards. And I'm writing these down because my partners already know how I analyze these deals. So that makes it a lot faster. Now, I want to briefly check what is the market rent in this area. And in order to do that, I can go to affordablehousing.com. I could go to the market rent estimator. I'm going to plug in the address and the bedroom count, and that will give me a pretty good estimate of what the average rent is on the market. And the reason I want to do that is because of two things. One is if I want to be more conservative, I might take the lower of the two. But because I have friends like Luke and Mike who invest in Greensboro and they tell me that they're getting 1250, the ceiling rent was great. So I see right here it's actually 1300. That's amazing. That means you're probably gonna get top of the top rent here. But because I'm gonna use the lower of the two, I'm still gonna use 1247 as my rent estimate, right? Just to be a little bit more conservative here. So I'll put that in B16. And again, for those of you that want to follow along and analyze this deal alongside with me, please go to affordablehousing.io, go to the Get Deal Analysis tool. That's the fastest way for you to get a copy of the spreadsheet. Again, it's affordablehousing.io. Click on the Get Deal Analysis tool. And that's the fastest way for you to get a copy of it. And you can do it alongside with me. All right. So for property taxes, all right, here's what we got going on. Let me get this from the payment calculator. We're on Redfin. Getting all my expenses. 85 for taxes, 57 for insurance, 85 for taxes, 57 for insurance. So for insurance, I'm going to equals 57 times 1.2. I'm adding a 20% premium here because I'm assuming an investment property is going to be viewed as a riskier asset compared to a primary residence, which is what I imagine that $57 estimate to be. So that brings me to 68.40. Now there's also a 244 HOA fee, so I'm put that right here in B34. And right now, typically, I would have a 10% maintenance, right? This is money you set aside every single month, anticipating future expenses, right? Like you know that HVAC is going to get replaced at some point. Now, in this case, I lowered to 5% because I know I have a big HOA payment. So that would cover things such as the sewer, that would cover items such as the roof. So that's the only reason I'm comfortable doing 5%. Typically, I would leave it at 10% because if you don't set aside money every single month, you will be grossly underestimating your expenses and overestimating your profitability. Don't be that person. Don't be the person lying to yourself about how much money you're making. Because in 10, 15 years, when you get that $10,000 bill to replace your roof, and you thought you were making like this extra $100 every single month, it's gonna be wiped out. So don't lie to yourself, right? Unless your strategy is very different. Now, property management, I got 10% for property management expenses, and I got 5% for vacancies. So on this deal right here, I got 25% down. So my down payment after I put in the listing price of 144,900 in B4, My down payment is going to be $36,000 for my renovations right here. Let me go to my rehab calculator spreadsheet. And again, I'm going to put in a cage for my HVAC unit in row number 192. This is a row I added because previously we didn't have it. I'm going to replace both of the toilets with high pressure flush toilets so that I don't get any clogged toilet calls because I don't want to deal with that stuff. I got about 200 square feet just for touch of paint so I can have something budget set aside. So that gives me a total rehab of with a little bit of contingency at 2880. Great. Now that I got all these numbers in there, let's assume that I can borrow at 7.875% interest rate right now. So my principal amount is going to be B4 minus E19. Great. So as a two bedroom, if I rent it for 1247, I would lose $188 every single month on this deal if I bought it for 140, call 145 grand. Right? Let's just round here with a $3,000 rehab. Again, just rounding here, and 25% down, 7.88% interest rate. So let's say now this is what I want to go through, right? I want you to be able to understand what is a deal for you, quote unquote, because this is not investment advice. I'm not soliciting any investments on this call. I'm simply sharing with you how you might be able to understand what criteria or what levers can you pull to make something that might not meet your criteria to make it meet your criteria. Now, one of your biggest, obviously, the lever is asking price. So pay attention to what happens to E9 as you lower your asking price to, let's say, 100 grand. Great, that's only 2%. Let's go to 80 grand. Boom. Now you're at 8%. So does that mean you can buy this property for 80 grand when it was listed for 145? Maybe, maybe not, probably. But hey, at least now you know. And now you can recognize, hey, if I'm ever looking at a two-bedroom condo deal in this area that requires a little bit of rehab or $3,000, not that much to be honest with you, but I have at a 25% down, 7.88% interest rate, that gets me to a 7.7% cash and cash return. That would be what's quote unquote a deal for you. Now, let's say this. Let's say your interest rates drop by a full point to 6.8775. See what happened to that cash to cash return number? It jumped with 2 whole points. Now, I just want to tell you, right? I learned this stuff from Logan Monashami on Housing Wire because your 30-year mortgage interest rate is heavily, heavily affected by a couple of factors. One of them One of them is the interest rate on the 10-year treasury yield. And then the other is the spread between the 10-year yield here to the 30-year mortgage interest rates. Now, you can learn this if you just look up, let's see, 30-year mortgage interest rate versus treasury prices. And you can kind of see in the past couple of years, like you can see it as varied as like this is almost 3%, right? This is when you saw interest rates in like the 80%. It was wild how bad it was. That's how big the spread was. Okay. That's how big the spread was. Well, nowadays, right now, I think it's roughly called 2.4. So historically, the average spread has been about 1.5 to 2%. So now that the spread has narrowed, that's the only reason why, even though the 10-year yield is almost like mid fours, it's still not at 8% interest rates because the spread has narrowed. So let's say you get better news overnight. There's more trade deals getting done, and people have more confidence. Let's say Trump has a Federal Reserve chair that he has tabbed as the successor to Jerome Powell, and this person that he let's call it a shadow Fed president, which is the terminology I heard on Housing Wire. They go out and tell the bond market or the bond traders that, hey, as soon as I get in, I'm going to lower interest rates. Blah 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 blah. That can happen. That can really happen. And that's how you get a 1 point move overnight. With a 10-year yield going down because of what bond traders are doing, and then with the spread getting narrow because there's less risk or less underwritten risk out there. So if that does happen, guess what? Now all of a sudden you pay $85,000 instead of 80 grand, right? Your buying power goes up. by a lot overnight, even though everything, I'm assuming again, everything stays constant, even though you are buying and renting out the property for 1247 still. Now, I'll do one more scenario. Let's say your rehab tripled, right? You get in there, you realize, oh my goodness, the plumbing is so bad, I have to repipe everything inside. Well, when that happens, all right, assuming everything else from the last scenario stays constant with a 6.875% interest rate, your cash and cash return just dropped to 6.6. So what does that mean you gotta do? You gotta increase. You gotta lower your buying price to get back to the same percentage. So in this scenario, your rehab tripled to nearly 90 grand. 9 grand. But that means you had to drop your purchase price again back down by 5 grand just to make up for it. So again, this is how you keep emotions out of the deal, stay focused on what your criteria is, and understand why you made a decision based on what decision criteria that you have, right? So this is my goal. I hope you analyze the same deal that I analyzed today, right? Using the same spreadsheet, and honestly just start your own YouTube channel, because at some point someone's gonna ask you, hey, why do you think this is a deal? And the only way that you are gonna be confident that you know what you're doing is by understanding that you have put in the reps, right? If you're able to tell someone, hey, I've been looking at deals for the past 678 days in a row, might that give you some confidence that you know what you're doing? I certainly hope so. All right. Hopefully this was helpful, everybody. I'll see you all tomorrow for day 679. Have a good one, everybody.